Do-young Kim was having a terrible day. She stared at the blinking red warning lights on her engineering console and wished, not for the first time, that she had taken that safe job on Earth instead of signing up for deep space research. The civilian research vessel, Innovative Spirit, shuddered again as another hit struck its hull. Do-young grabbed her console to stay upright. Around her, loose tools and equipment clattered to the floor of the engineering bay. Status report. Captain Sujai Yang's voice crackled through the ship's communication system. Even through the static, Do-young could hear the tension in her voice. Main weapons are offline, Do-young reported, her fingers flying over the controls. Shield generators are at 12% and falling. Hull breach on decks 3 and 4, but emergency seals are holding. She paused, checking another reading. And we just lost the backup power core. The ship's lights flickered ominously. Do-young held her breath until they stabilized, running on emergency power only. Outside the reinforced viewport, she could see the sleek, predatory shape of the alien vessel that had attacked them without warning or provocation. Its dark hull seemed to absorb the light from nearby stars, making it look like a hole in space. Engineering team, evacuate to the safe zones immediately, Captain Yang ordered. That's not a suggestion, people. Move. Do-young started to protest. There had to be something else she could try to get the weapons back online. But the ship's violent shaking convinced her otherwise. She joined the stream of engineers and technicians hurrying toward the designated safe areas deep within the ship's core. They had almost reached the shelter when the ship's artificial gravity flickered and failed. Do-young's stomach lurched as she started to float. Around her, tools and equipment broke free from their storage units, turning the corridor into a dangerous obstacle course of drifting objects. In here, she grabbed a handful of her floating colleagues' jumpsuits and pulled them toward a maintenance storage room. It wasn't one of the designated safe zones, but it had emergency air supplies and thick walls. Right now, that would have to do. The door sealed behind them with a reassuring hiss. Do-young did a quick head count. 6 people total, all from her engineering team. They used their magnetic boots to stick to the floor, creating at least some sense of normalcy. "What are those things?" asked technician Jun Seo-ba, his face pale in the emergency lighting. "I've never seen a ship like that before." "Nexer," said senior engineer Hyun Woo Choi grimly. "They're supposed to stay in their own territory according to the treaties. We're nowhere near their space." Do-young had heard of the Nexer, of course. Everyone had. They were one of the first alien species humanity had encountered after developing faster-than-light travel. The initial contact had been peaceful, but relations had grown increasingly tense over the past few years. The ship shuddered again, and this time the sound was different. Do-young recognized it immediately. The distinctive thump of a boarding tube attaching to the hull. "They're going to board us," she said, her mind racing. "We need weapons." "The armory is 3 decks up," said Jun Seo, "and all our security personnel were called to defend the bridge." Do-young looked around the storage room, taking inventory, cleaning supplies, spare parts, tools, several boxes of industrial-grade duct tape, emergency repair kits, nothing that could be considered a weapon. At least, not in the conventional sense. But Do-young had grown up with a grandfather who could fix anything with duct tape and determination. He used to say that every problem was just a solution waiting to be discovered. Looking at the supplies around her, she felt an idea starting to form. "Help me gather everything," she said, pushing off from the wall to float toward the supplies. "Tools, tape, anything that moves or has power." "What are you planning?" asked Hyunwoo, but he was already moving to help. "We're engineers," Do-young said, grabbing rolls of duct tape and stuffing them into her pockets. "We solve problems. And right now, we have a big problem that needs solving." They worked quickly, gathering supplies while the sounds of combat echoed through the ship's hull. Do-young's mind was already racing ahead, seeing possibilities in every piece of equipment. The cleaning drone could be modified. The pressure tanks from the emergency repair kits had potential. Even the spare parts for the air recycling system could be useful if reconfigured properly. "Listen," she said, gathering her team around. "The Nexer are used to fighting against regular weapons. They'll be expecting guns, explosives, energy weapons. They won't be expecting what we're about to build." The footsteps grew closer. Through the small window in the door, Du Young caught her first glimpse of a Nexer soldier. It was tall, covered in sleek black armor that seemed to absorb light. Its helmet had no visible visor, just a smooth, featureless surface that somehow made it look even more alien and threatening. The Nexer passed their door, then stopped. Du Young held her breath as it turned back, apparently noticing the heat signatures from their makeshift workshop. It raised what appeared to be a scanning device. Now, Du Young hit the activation switch. The modified cleaning drone shot out from its hiding place, its normal cleaning brushes replaced with strips of industrial-strength adhesive backing. It slammed into the Nexer soldier's legs, the sticky strips wrapping around its armored limbs. The alien stumbled, trying to bring its weapon to bear on the small, fast-moving target. That's when the second part of Du Young's plan went into action. Jun Seo triggered the modified pressure tank, releasing a blast of compressed air mixed with industrial cleaner. The Nexer soldier's helmet sensors were suddenly covered in a sticky, rapidly hardening foam. The alien staggered, temporarily blinded. Its armor, designed to stop energy weapons and projectiles, had no defense against being tangled in strips of incredibly sticky industrial adhesive. It tried to move and lost its balance, crashing heavily to the deck. "It worked," Jun Seo exclaimed, perhaps a bit too loudly. More footsteps were approaching rapidly. Du Young activated the rest of their improvised defenses. Modified maintenance drones zipped out, armed with various combinations of adhesive strips, pressurized cleaning solutions, and improvised taser units made from rewired power cells. The corridor erupted into chaos. Nexer soldiers, expecting to face conventional resistance, found themselves instead fighting against a swarm of small, agile drones that seemed determined to wrap them in sticky tape and spray them with cleaning solutions. "They're trying to cut through the adhesive," Hyunwoo reported, watching through the door's window. "But the industrial-grade stuff is giving them trouble. Their armor's getting gummed up." Do Young nodded in satisfaction. The Nexer's advanced armor was working against them. All those joints and servos were perfect places for the adhesive to get stuck. Every movement just made the problem worse. One of the aliens managed to blast a drone with its weapon, only to have the destroyed machine release its entire payload of pressurized cleaning foam. The Nexer staggered back, its armor covered in rapidly hardening chemicals. "Should we deploy the last one?" Jun Seo asked, holding their final modified drone. Do Young checked their supplies. They had enough materials to make more weapons if needed, and the situation in the corridor was deteriorating for the Nexer troops. "Do it," she said. Their last drone was special. They'd attached multiple rolls of duct tape to it in a way that would unspool as it flew. Jun Seo launched it toward the group of struggling aliens. The drone began spinning, creating a web of incredibly sticky industrial tape that effectively wrapped up 2 more Nexer soldiers. The aliens were shouting now in their own language, their voices distorted by their helmets. Du Young didn't need a translator to know they were calling for help, and probably trying to warn others about the unexpected resistance they'd encountered. "They're retreating," Hyunwoo reported excitedly. Sure enough, the Nexer soldiers were falling back, dragging their tape-encased companions with them. They moved awkwardly, their armor still stuck with bits of adhesive and covered in hardened cleaning foam. Do Young allowed herself to breathe normally for the first time in what felt like hours. They had done it. They had actually managed to drive back an alien boarding party with nothing but cleaning supplies and duct tape. The ship's communication system crackled to life. "Engineering team," Captain Yang's voice came through, sounding both tired and amused. "We're getting some very strange reports from the Nexer boarding parties about being attacked by cleaning supplies. Would any of you happen to know anything about that?" Do-young picked up the comm unit. "Captain, this is Engineer Kim. We had to improvise with the materials we had available. I can explain everything in my report." There was a pause, then Captain Yang's voice returned, now definitely containing a note of amusement. "I look forward to reading that report, Engineer Kim. In the meantime, the Nexer ship is retreating. Whatever you did down there, it seems to have convinced them to reconsider their attack." The engineering team shared looks of relief and pride. They had survived, and they had done it by thinking creatively and using the tools at hand. "We should gather more supplies," Du-young said, already thinking ahead. "They might come back, and next time we'll need to be better prepared." As her team began collecting more materials, Du-young picked up another roll of duct tape and smiled. Her grandfather had been right. Every problem was just a solution waiting to be discovered. Sometimes that solution just happened to involve cleaning drones and industrial adhesives. The innovative spirit continued its journey through space, now carrying a new legend that would soon spread throughout human space. The story of how a team of engineers had defended their ship with nothing but duct tape, determination, and a creative approach to problem solving. Security Officer Jai-ho Park did not like surprises. In his 10 years of service aboard research vessels, he had learned that surprises usually meant trouble. Right now, watching the security feeds from Engineering Section B, he was experiencing the biggest surprise of his career. He watched in amazement as the recording showed a group of engineers fighting off Nexer soldiers with modified cleaning drones and duct tape. The aliens' expensive combat armor was rendered almost useless by simple adhesive strips and cleaning foam. It was both ridiculous and brilliant. "I need to meet these engineers," he said to himself, standing up from his security station. The Nexer ship had retreated an hour ago, but Jai-ho knew better than to think they were gone for good. They would be back, probably with reinforcements. He found Du-young Kim and her team still in their makeshift workshop, already working on new defensive measures. Tools and spare parts covered every surface, and rolls of duct tape were everywhere. The engineers looked up as he entered. "Security Officer Park," Du-young said, setting down a half-modified maintenance drone. "What can we do for you?" Jai-ho looked at their work with professional interest. "I saw the security footage. You turned cleaning supplies into effective weapons against one of the most advanced military forces in known space. I want to help you make more." Do-young smiled. "We could use someone with security training. We know how to build things, but you know how to fight. Together, we might be able to create even better defenses." Jai-ho pulled up a chair. "Tell me what you need." The next few hours were a crash course in creative engineering. Jai-ho explained Nexer combat tactics and weaknesses, while Du-young and her team suggested ways to exploit those weaknesses using everyday items. Together, they began transforming the ship's ordinary maintenance equipment into an arsenal of unconventional weapons. "Their armor is designed to disperse energy weapon hits," Jai-ho explained, sketching a diagram. "But it has many moving parts that can be jammed. The joints here, and here are particularly vulnerable." Do-young nodded, already modifying their designs. "We can program the drones to target those specific points with the strongest adhesive. And look at this." She held up what looked like an ordinary air filter. "With some modifications, we can turn this into a high-pressure spray system. The Nexer helmets can't handle sudden changes in air pressure very well." Their work was interrupted by the ship's alert system. Captain Yang's voice came over the speakers. "All hands, battle stations. 2 Nexer vessels approaching. They'll be within range in 20 minutes. 2 ships," Junseo said nervously. "That's a lot more soldiers than last time." "Then we'll need a lot more traps," Du-young said firmly. She turned to Jai-ho. "Officer Park, can you help us set up defensive positions?" Jai-ho was already moving. "We'll establish choke points at these intersections. If we can predict where they'll try to board, we can prepare proper welcomes for them." They worked quickly, setting up their improvised defenses. Regular security teams fortified the bridge and other critical areas with conventional weapons, while Du Young's team focused on the unconventional approach. Remember, Jiaho told them as they worked, the Nexer rely heavily on their technology. They expect enemies to fight the same way they do. They won't be prepared for these kinds of tactics. The first impact shook the ship 15 minutes later. This time, the Nexer attacked from multiple points, attaching boarding tubes to different sections of the hull. But Du Young's team was ready for them. In Section C, the first group of Nexer soldiers encountered what appeared to be a simple barricade of storage containers. When they tried to move it, hidden pressure tanks released clouds of magnetized metallic powder. The powder was harmless on its own, but it was attracted to the energy fields generated by their armor. Within seconds, their systems were clogged with fine metal dust. In the main corridor, another group faced an army of modified cleaning drones. The small machines darted in and out, wrapping legs in adhesive strips and spraying armored joints with quick hardening foam. The Nexer's advanced targeting systems struggled to lock onto the tiny, erratically moving targets. They're adapting, Jiaho reported, watching the security feeds. They're trying to shoot the drones from a distance. Perfect, Du Young said with a smile. She pressed a button on her tablet. The next wave of drones appeared to malfunction when hit, exploding into clouds of fibrous material. The threads, made from unspooled duct tape, treated with adhesive on both sides, filled the air like spider webs. The more the Nexer soldiers moved, the more tangled they became. In Engineering Section A, Hyunwoo had rigged the ventilation system to create zones of rapidly changing air pressure. Nexer soldiers found their sensitive equipment malfunctioning as they passed through these invisible barriers. Their normally precise movements became clumsy and uncoordinated. This is amazing, Jiaho said, watching another group of aliens retreat from a corridor now filled with various adhesives and cleaning chemicals. We're actually pushing them back. The ship's communication system crackled. Engineering team. Captain Yang's voice came through. The Nexer are requesting communication. I think we've got their attention. Do Young looked at her team, then at Jiaho. They were all tired but proud. Using nothing more than common materials and creative thinking, they had defended their ship against technically superior forces. Should we show them what else we've prepared? Junseo asked hopefully, holding up their latest creation, a drone equipped with multiple spinning arms, each dispensing a different type of adhesive and cleaning solution. Hold that thought, Du Young said. Let's see what they have to say first. The Nexer commander's image appeared on their communication screen. Its smooth black helmet reflected the light, but there was something about its posture that suggested confusion and perhaps a hint of respect. Your defensive measures are unexpected, the Nexer commander said, its translated voice containing a note of what might have been embarrassment. Our soldiers report that their advanced combat systems are being defeated by cleaning supplies and adhesive strips. We use what we have available, Du Young replied diplomatically. Would you like us to demonstrate more of our defensive capabilities? There was a long pause. The Nexer commander seemed to be struggling with the concept that its elite boarding parties had been fought off by maintenance equipment and creative applications of duct tape. This is not how combat is supposed to work, the commander said finally. Jiaho stepped forward. Perhaps you should consider that humans have a long history of turning ordinary objects into effective tools and weapons. It's one of our specialties. Another pause. We will withdraw, the Nexer commander announced. But this incident will be reported to our military council. Humans are more resourceful than our studies suggested. As the Nexer ships retreated, the engineering team began cleaning up their workshop. They collected their modified drones and started discussing improvements for their designs. You know, Jiaho said to Du Young as they worked, we should document these defense techniques. Other ships could use them. Do Young nodded thoughtfully. We could create a manual. Unconventional defense measures for civilian vessels, or something like that. Though we might want to leave out the part about it mostly involving duct tape and cleaning supplies. It sounds less impressive that way. I disagree, Jiaho said. I think that's the most impressive part. You prove the humans can defend themselves with whatever they have on hand. That's a powerful message. The innovative spirit continued its journey, now carrying not just its original research mission, but also a new kind of knowledge. The understanding that human creativity and resourcefulness could turn even the simplest objects into effective defensive tools. News of their successful defense spread quickly through human space. Other ships began requesting copies of their improvised defense techniques. Du Young and Ji Ho found themselves giving presentations to engineering and security teams, teaching them how to think creatively about defense. The Nexer, meanwhile, had to revise their combat protocols. Their reports now included warnings about human ingenuity and the dangers of underestimating a species that could turn maintenance supplies into weapons. They had learned an important lesson. Sometimes the simplest solutions were the most effective, especially when combined with determination and a few rolls of duct tape. As Do Young worked on documenting their defensive innovations, she couldn't help but smile at how they had changed the dynamics of space combat. The Nexer had expected to find an easy target in a civilian research vessel. Instead, they had discovered that humans could be formidable opponents with nothing more than common materials and creative thinking. "What's next on our modification list?" Ji Ho asked, looking at their workshop full of half-modified equipment. "Well," Du Young said, picking up another roll of duct tape, "I have some ideas about improving our pressure differential traps, and I think we can make the adhesive delivery systems more efficient." The engineering team gathered around, ready to turn more ordinary objects into extraordinary defensive measures. They had discovered their greatest strength, the ability to see the potential for innovation in everything around them. Lieutenant Hajun Lee sat at his desk in the United Earth Defense Force headquarters, reading the report from the civilian research vessel, Innovative Spirit, for the third time. He still could not believe what he was seeing. They defeated Nexer boarding parties with cleaning supplies and duct tape, he said out loud, shaking his head in amazement. And then they did it again when the Nexer came back with reinforcements. The report included detailed video footage from the ship's security cameras. Hajun watched as small maintenance drones, modified with adhesive strips and cleaning solutions, effectively disabled Nexer soldiers wearing advanced combat armor. It was both amusing and impressive. He pressed the intercom button on his desk. "Get me a direct line to Captain Yang of the Innovative Spirit. I need to speak with their engineering team." 20 minutes later, Hajun was talking with engineer Du Young Kim and security officer Ji Ho Park. Their faces appeared on his screen, looking tired but proud. "Your defensive techniques are remarkable," Hajun said. "I think we need to implement them across our fleet. Would you be willing to help develop a training program?" Du Young and Ji Ho exchanged glances. "Of course," Du Young said. "But won't the Defense Force want something more military?" Hajun smiled. "Sometimes the simplest solutions are the best. Your methods worked because they were unexpected. The Nexer didn't know how to counter them. That's exactly what we need." Over the next few weeks, Hajun worked closely with Du Young and Ji Ho to create a comprehensive guide to improvised defense techniques. They called it the Innovative Defense Protocol, though some officers nicknamed it the Duct Tape Defense Guide. The guide spread quickly through human space. Ships began adding extra supplies of industrial adhesives to their inventory. Engineering teams started practicing with maintenance drones, learning to modify them quickly in emergency situations. Captain Sujai Yang watched this development with interest. Her ship, the Innovative Spirit, had become famous after their encounters with the Nexer. Other captains frequently contacted her for advice about implementing the new defensive measures. "The Nexer are adapting," she told Hajun during one of their regular meetings. "They're trying to develop countermeasures against our improvised weapons." "That's exactly what we expected," Hajun replied. "But that's also why these techniques work so well. Every time they develop a countermeasure, our people just create something new. You can't predict what humans will come up with when they're desperate and creative." He was right. Reports came in from across human space about successful defenses using improvised weapons. Each group added their own innovations to the original techniques. The mining station, Deep Rock 7, repelled raiders using modified mineral scanners that interfered with enemy targeting systems. The research outpost, Horizon Point, created defensive barriers using quick-hardening industrial foam meant for hull repairs. Even the luxury passenger liner Star Dream successfully defended itself using modified food preparation equipment. Military strategists studied these incidents with great interest. They began incorporating improvised warfare techniques into their standard training programs. Hajun found himself promoted to the newly created position of Innovative Defense Coordinator. One morning, he received an urgent message from a frontier colony. The small settlement had fought off a Nexer scouting party using farming equipment and construction supplies. The colonists had studied the innovative defense protocol and adapted it to their needs. "We saw them coming," the colony leader reported. "Thanks to your guide, we were ready. We turned our irrigation systems into area denial weapons. Our construction adhesives work just as well as military-grade materials." The Nexer didn't know what hit them. Hajun added their innovations to the growing database of improvised defense techniques. The document had grown from Du Young's original notes into a comprehensive guide for turning ordinary objects into effective defensive tools. The key, he explained during a training session for military officers, is understanding that anything can be a weapon if used creatively. Humans have been doing this throughout our history. We're just applying that principle to space warfare. The Nexer noticed these changes. Their military reports began including warnings about human resourcefulness. Their soldiers became hesitant to board human vessels, never knowing what ordinary object might have been transformed into a weapon. One Nexer commander, after retreating from a failed attack on a research station, sent a message that summed up their growing frustration. "How can we fight an enemy that turns cleaning supplies into weapons?" Their creativity defies military logic. Hajun shared this message during a Defense Council meeting. "This is our advantage," he said. "The Nexer think in terms of conventional weapons and tactics. We think in terms of possibilities. Every object is a potential tool or weapon. That mindset is more valuable than any advanced technology." The Council agreed. They increased funding for innovative defense research and established training centers where engineers and security personnel could practice improvising weapons from common materials. Du Young and Jiho were invited to teach at these centers. They showed students how to look at ordinary objects with new eyes, seeing defensive potential in everything from maintenance equipment to food processors. The most important tool, Du Young would tell her students, is your imagination. That, and maybe some duct tape. Her classes were always full. Engineers and security officers learned to combine their knowledge, creating defensive systems that no enemy could predict. The phrase, "What would the innovative spirit do?" became common throughout human space. Even civilian ships and stations began running regular drills, practicing quick modifications to their equipment. Engineering teams competed to create the most effective improvisations using limited materials. Hajun watched all this with satisfaction. The human ability to adapt and improvise had turned into a significant tactical advantage. The Nexer's superior technology meant little when faced with unpredictable opponents who could turn anything into a weapon. One day, he received a report that made him laugh out loud. A small research ship had driven off a Nexer patrol using nothing but modified food synthesizers and maintenance robots. The ship's engineer had apparently been inspired by cooking shows from Earth. "This is why we're succeeding," he told his staff. "We're not just fighting with technology. We're fighting with creativity and determination. Every human ship and station has become a potential fortress, armed with whatever materials they have on hand." The message continued to spread. Human ships traveled through space, carrying not just their regular equipment, but also the knowledge that they could defend themselves with whatever they had available. The Nexer's aggressive patrols became less frequent as they learned to be wary of human ingenuity. Hajun kept in regular contact with Du Young and Jiho. They continued to refine and improve their techniques, always finding new ways to turn ordinary objects into extraordinary defenses. "Did you ever think," he asked them during one conversation, "that your improvised defense would change the way we approach space warfare?" "Honestly," Du Young replied, "at the time, we were just trying to survive. We used what we had available. That's what humans do. We adapt, we improvise, and we overcome." Jaiho nodded in agreement. "The Nexers still don't understand. They see our technology and think they know our capabilities, but they don't realize that our greatest weapon is our ability to think creatively under pressure." Hajum smiled. They were right. The spread of improvised defense techniques had done more than just protect human ships and stations. It had shown the galaxy that humans were not to be underestimated, no matter how simple their tools might seem. The message was clear: give humans any materials, no matter how ordinary, and they would find a way to defend themselves. Advanced alien technology was impressive, but human creativity and determination were proving to be even more powerful. Engineering specialist Mireille Cho stood in the observation room of Space Station Beta, watching as Nexer soldiers moved through a captured human cargo vessel. The aliens were being extremely careful, removing anything that could potentially be used as a weapon. They had learned from their previous encounters with human ingenuity. "They're taking all the cleaning supplies," reported her assistant through the communication system. "And they're removing maintenance equipment, spare parts, even the food processors." Mayray smiled. The Nexer thought they were being clever, but they didn't understand the true nature of human adaptability. She turned to the group of engineers gathered behind her. "Watch carefully," she said. "This is why our new defensive systems work so well. The Nexer think they can predict what we'll use as weapons. They can't." The captured vessel was part of a planned demonstration. Mayray had helped design its defense systems, incorporating the latest innovations in improvised warfare. Now, she would show her students why the Nexer's precautions were useless. The Nexer boarding party moved efficiently through the ship, following their new protocols for securing human vessels. They disabled the primary systems, removed all maintenance equipment, and sealed off storage areas containing tools or supplies. "They think they're in control now," Mayray said to her students. "Let's show them why they're wrong." She pressed a button on her control panel. Throughout the captured vessel, simple air filtration panels detached from the walls. These basic components, overlooked by the Nexer as too primitive to be threatening, had been modified with minimal changes. The panels released clouds of fine metallic particles, the same material used in the filters, just reconfigured. The particles were attracted to the energy fields generated by Nexer armor, quickly coating their sensors and blocking their vision. "First lesson," Mayray announced. "Everything on a human ship serves multiple purposes. If we can't use cleaning supplies, we'll use air filters. If we can't use maintenance drones, we'll use ventilation systems." The Nexer soldiers struggled to clear their sensors. They hadn't expected an attack from such basic ship components. While they were distracted, wall panels throughout the ship began to vibrate at specific frequencies. "Second lesson," Mayray continued. "Simple physics can be more effective than complex technology." The vibrations interfered with the Nexer's sensitive equipment. Their advanced targeting systems, designed to filter out normal ship operations, couldn't compensate for the irregular patterns. The soldiers began to move erratically, their coordination disrupted. "They're retreating to their ship," reported the assistant. "Should we show them the next phase?" Mayray considered for a moment. Yes, they need to understand that this isn't about specific tools or equipment. It's about human creativity. The next phase activated as the Nexer reached their boarding tubes. The ship's standard atmosphere recyclers, devices so basic that the aliens hadn't considered them a threat, began working in reverse. The sudden change in air pressure made the Nexer's movements even more difficult. "Third lesson," Mayray said. "Never assume you know all the ways a system can be used." The Nexer completed their retreat, disconnecting their boarding tubes quickly. Mayre's students watched in fascination as the alien ship moved away from the cargo vessel. "That was amazing," one student said. "But won't they adapt to these techniques too?" "Of course they will," Mayre replied. "That's why we keep innovating. Every time they develop countermeasures, we find new ways to use different systems. It's not about specific weapons. It's about understanding that everything can be used in multiple ways." The demonstration was a success. Mayre's students had learned valuable lessons about improvised defense techniques. More importantly, they had seen how human ingenuity could overcome technological advantages. Word of the demonstration spread quickly through human space. Mayre found herself receiving requests from other stations and ships, all wanting to learn her techniques for turning basic ship systems into defensive measures. The key, she explained during a presentation to ship captains, is understanding that defense isn't about having the right weapons. It's about seeing the potential in everything around you. She showed them how to modify life support systems, alter gravity controls, and repurpose waste management equipment. Everything on a ship could become part of its defense. The Nexer were frustrated by these developments. Their military reports showed increasing concern about human adaptability. One commander wrote, "They have no standard defense protocols. Every ship defends itself differently, using whatever systems are available. We cannot predict their methods." Mayre took pride in these reports. She had helped develop a new approach to space warfare, one that relied on creativity rather than advanced technology. Her work caught the attention of the United Earth Defense Force. They invited her to join a special research team focused on developing new applications for existing ship systems. "Your innovations are changing how we think about ship design," the project leader told her. "We're starting to build vessels with systems that can be easily modified for defense. The Nexar won't be able to simply remove our weapons, because everything on the ship is potentially a weapon." Mayre worked with engineers across human space, sharing ideas and developing new techniques. Every successful defense against the Nexar brought new insights and possibilities. Even civilian vessels began incorporating her design principles. Cargo ships, research vessels, and passenger liners were built with systems that could quickly be converted for defense. The lines between civilian and military technology became increasingly blurred. "The Nexar think technology determines military power," Mayre told her students. "We're showing them that creativity and adaptability are more important. They can't predict what we'll do because we don't even know until we're in the situation." Her words proved prophetic. Reports continued to come in from across human space about successful defenses using improvised methods. Each incident was different, each solution unique to the situation and available resources. A mining station repelled attackers by reconfiguring its ore processing systems. A research vessel escaped pursuit by modifying its sensor arrays to confuse Nexar targeting systems. A passenger liner defended itself by turning its artificial gravity generators into weapons. The Nexar began to withdraw from human space. Their military leaders couldn't develop effective strategies against an enemy that constantly adapted and improvised. Mayre watched these developments with satisfaction. She had helped prove that human ingenuity was more valuable than advanced technology. Every human vessel had become a potential fortress, capable of defending itself with whatever systems it had available. "We're not just teaching defense techniques," she told her students. "We're teaching a way of thinking. Look at everything around you and ask, how else could this be used? What else could this do?" That's how humans have always survived and thrived. The message spread throughout human space. Technology was just a tool. The real weapon was the human ability to adapt, improvise, and overcome challenges with whatever resources were available. And somewhere out in space, Nexar military planners were learning a valuable lesson. Never underestimate a species that could turn anything into a weapon, even the most basic ship systems. The age of improvised warfare had begun, and humanity was leading the way. Ambassador Taiwan Kang stood before the large window in the diplomatic chamber of Nexar Station Alpha, watching the stars. Behind him, Representatives from both human and Nexer governments prepared for the most important diplomatic meeting in recent history. The past 6 months had changed everything. What began with a simple engineer's creative use of duct tape and cleaning supplies had evolved into a complete transformation of space warfare. Now both sides were ready to talk about peace. Ambassador Kang, his assistant, said quietly, "The Nexer High Command is ready to begin." Taiwan turned from the window. The diplomatic chamber was divided into 2 sections. On one side sat the human delegation, including Du Yum Kim, Jai-Ho Park, He-Jun Lee, and Mi-Ray Cho. On the other side, Nexer military commanders sat in their distinctive black armor, their smooth helmets reflecting the room's light. "Thank you all for coming," Taiwan began. "We are here to discuss the recent changes in our relationship and to find a path forward that benefits both our peoples." The Nexer Supreme Commander spoke through its translation system. "We have reviewed all incidents involving human vessels over the past 6 months. Your species has demonstrated unexpected capabilities." Taiwan nodded. "Perhaps we should begin by addressing those capabilities. Engineer Kim, would you explain how this all started?" Do Young stood up, looking confident despite the impressive audience. "It began with necessity. When our ship was attacked, we used what we had available: maintenance supplies, cleaning equipment, and duct tape. We proved that humans can defend themselves with even the simplest materials." "This defies military logic," one Nexer commander said. "Simple tools should not be effective against advanced combat systems." "That's exactly the point," He-Jun added. "Human innovation isn't about having the best technology. It's about using whatever is available in creative ways." Mi-Ray stepped forward with a data tablet. "I have compiled statistics from the past 6 months. Every attempted incursion into human space has been repelled using improvised defenses. No 2 encounters used exactly the same methods." The Nexer commanders studied the data. Their body language, even in their armor, showed their discomfort with these findings. "How can we develop effective strategies?" another commander asked. "Against an enemy that turns ventilation systems into weapons, that transforms food processors into defense mechanisms, that uses adhesive strips to disable advanced armor." "Perhaps," Taiwan suggested, "that is why we should be talking about peace instead of military strategy." The room grew quiet. The Nexer Supreme Commander stood, its armor gleaming under the lights. "Explain." "Our species are different," Taiwan said. "The Nexer believe in the power of advanced technology and standardized military protocols. Humans believe in creativity and adaptation. Neither approach is wrong. They're just different." He walked to the center of the room. "The past 6 months have shown that conflict between us is pointless. You cannot predict how humans will defend themselves because we will always find new ways to use whatever resources we have, and we cannot match your technological advancement." "This is true," the Supreme Commander acknowledged. "Our analysts cannot develop countermeasures fast enough. Every time we adapt to one human innovation, 3 more appear." Jai-Ho spoke up from his seat. "That's because you're trying to counter specific techniques. But our real strength isn't in any particular defense method. It's in our ability to improvise and adapt." "Exactly," Taiwan said. "Which is why I propose a new relationship between our peoples. Instead of competing, we should be collaborating. Imagine combining Nexer technological advancement with human creativity and adaptability." The Nexer commanders conferred among themselves. The Supreme Commander turned back to the human delegation. "Your species has earned our respect. Despite inferior technology, you have demonstrated remarkable capabilities. Perhaps cooperation would be more productive than conflict." Over the next several hours, they worked out the framework for a new agreement. The Nexer would withdraw their military forces from human space. In exchange, humans would share their innovative approaches to problem solving, while the Nexer would share some of their technical knowledge. "There is one thing we still do not understand," a Nexer commander said near the end of the meeting. "Why do humans carry this duct tape everywhere? Our analysis shows it is a simple adhesive strip." Do Young smiled. That's exactly why we carry it. It's simple, but it can be used in countless ways. It represents human innovation, taking something basic and finding endless possibilities for its use. The Supreme Commander studied her for a moment. We have much to learn from each other, it said finally. Your species sees possibilities where we see limitations. This is valuable. As the meeting concluded, Taiwan looked around the room at both delegations. The humans who had started this change, Du Young with her creative use of cleaning supplies, Jai Ho with his tactical knowledge, Ho Jun with his promotion of innovative defense, and Mi Rui with her advancement of improvised warfare, sat proudly alongside the Nexer commanders who had once seen humans as technologically inferior. This is a historic day, he announced. We have turned a potential war into an opportunity for cooperation. And it all began because humans refused to be limited by their resources. Later, as the delegations prepared to leave, the Supreme Commander approached Du Young. Your initial defense of the innovative spirit, it said, has changed how we view human capabilities. You have taught us that true innovation comes not from having the best technology, but from having the creativity to use any technology effectively. Du Young nodded. That's the real lesson in all of this. Every tool, every system, every piece of technology has more potential than its original purpose. Humans just have a talent for finding those possibilities. As Taiwan watched the Nexer delegation depart, he reflected on how much had changed. What began as a desperate defense using cleaning supplies and duct tape had evolved into a new era of cooperation between species. The message had spread far beyond human space now. Other alien races were learning the same lesson the Nexer had learned. Never underestimate a species that could defend itself with nothing more than creativity and determination. The age of improvised warfare had led to an age of innovation and cooperation. And somewhere on the innovative spirit, in a storage room that had become famous throughout known space, a roll of duct tape still hung on the wall. A simple reminder that anything was possible with the right combination of creativity and determination.